Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's really good to be with you again this morning. If you have your Bibles, I hope you do. I want to invite you to open to Matthew chapter 7. We're going to be using verses 13 and 14 as part of this morning's message. It's so good to see you guys. This is like coming home all over again. So thank you for your warm welcome and your smiles. As we get ready to launch into today's message, before we look at those verses, and maybe it's a way to kind of capture you and to get your thoughts going in a certain direction, I'd like to do an activity. I'm kind of fearful for calling it a game because we are in church, but if you guys would indulge me, we're going to call this Would You Rather. And I'm asking for full participation. I'm going to ask the question, would you rather one thing or the other? After I give the options, we'll vote, okay? And we'll see who wins. So, just a few of these. Would you rather eat donuts or ice cream? All right, so donuts, raise your hand. All right, hands down, ice cream. So now I get you thinking, when's the sermon going to be over? Because we're hungry, right? Well, I got another good question. Would you rather eat Cane's or Chick-fil-A? Remember, you're in church. So, Chick-fil-A? Just kidding. Cane's? We have a few Cane's fans out there. Okay. Would you rather have a pool, swimming pool, or a trampoline? Now, depending on your age. I don't need to bounce around anymore, but who would rather have a pool? And the trampoline? All the youngsters went downstairs already. Okay. Would you rather be a police officer or a fireman? Police officer. Yeah. Fireman. So we know who's running at the bullets and who's running at the fire. So, would you rather have a snowball fight or a water balloon fight?
Ooh.
Snowball fight.
I'm going to vote twice.
You can't do twice, kidding. All right. The rest of you would be balloon fight. So this gets a little tougher. You might not vote at all here. Would you rather meet a snake or meet a spider? Snakes? Spiders? I'm all in spiders. They don't bother me. Neither. Everybody. Would you rather have super speed, think Flash, or super strength, think Hulk? Who wants super speed? You're going to outrun them. Who wants super strength? You're just going to throw them out anyway. Okay. Just a few more. Would you rather go bungee jumping or skydiving? Yeah, Paul's gone. I ain't doing either one of those. Bungee jumpers, where are you? Let me remind you, the parachute has more than just one string. But also it has to open, right? So, receive a shot from your doctor, this is careful, or a cavity filled by your dentist. Would you rather have a shot by your doctor? Yeah, because you're going to get cavity filled, they're going to give you a shot anyway, right? All right, so would you rather eat McDonald's or Wendy's? I'll still shake her head, she don't want to eat. I'm just kidding. McDonald's and Wendy's. All right, just a couple more. Would you rather have a dog or a cat?
A dog.
Cat. Really? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Would you rather be invisible, like me right now, or read people's minds? So who wants to be invisible? Who wants to read minds? That's be careful. All right, just a little to get you thinking. You had to make some decisions in this little exercise or activity, right? And we make decisions every single day, thousands of them. And preparing for this message, I went to the best source of information, Google, to see, on average, how many decisions people make a day. Anybody care to guess what Google says? Come on, somebody. 400.
2,000.
Is that what you said?
I said 50.
50. Anybody else?
Yeah, 2,000.
2,000. You're a lot closer than 50, not 50. This will blow your mind, really, if you believe Google. It's in the tens of thousands. 35,000 decisions a day. Most of those are pretty simple, like your alarm clock goes off. Are you going to hit snooze? Are you actually going to get up? And if you hit snooze, you're just prolonging the next decision 9 minutes later. Are you going to hit snooze again? Or are you going to get up? And that's going to determine another decision. Are you going to be breaking the law and the police are after you on your way to work because you hit snooze too many times? Or when you get up, ladies, what makeup are you going to wear? Men, what are you going to wear to work? What are you going to do that day? Are you going to wear shorts? Are you going to wear a shirt? Are you going to wear a skirt? Are you going to wear a dress? Or is it time to curl your hair, or every other day cut your hair? Both of them. Think about the decisions you made this morning on your way here. What time are you getting up? What time are you getting the kids up? What are you going to wear? What are they going to wear? Are you going to wear glasses? Are you going to wear contacts? Do you need either one of those? It goes on and on and on. And most of those decisions are very, very simple, right? But there are some major decisions in life. Raise your hand if you're between the ages of 16 and 26. All right, so you guys are in the decade of your life. Now, I want you to think about this. Within this decade, you're going to drive a car and get your license. You're going to graduate school, go to college, or start a career, or both. Possibly figure out who you're going to marry, move away from home, maybe. The parents are hoping. Probably maybe even have children. The decisions that you make in this decade are going to be phenomenal on the impact of the rest of your life. For those of you who are outside of that window, just talk to them. They'll tell you. But there's a decision I want to talk about today, found in Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Now I want you guys to put on your thinking caps. It says there, Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, enter through the narrow, or the small gate. So everybody put your finger and your thumb together like you're going to talk about the fish, give me a cold soup hot. Think small. Jesus says, for wide or broad is the gate, and wide is the road that leads to destruction. Many are on it. But small is the road that leads to life. And few find it. So you think it's small, we're thinking big. You have to make a decision. Now careful, church, because a lot of Americans think there's this middle road. It's not really narrow, not really broad. It's kind of just right for me. It doesn't have a lot of people on it. It doesn't have too few people on it. It has just the right amount. But that's not the road Jesus describes, is it? That's not one of the would you rather choices. You're going to choose a small road that leads to life. Jesus says some other things about life. You guys know me because you guys know these scriptures. He said in John chapter 14, verse 6, I am the, don't be bashful, I am the way, and the, there's that word life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. In John chapter 3, verse 16, John wrote, for God so loved the world, that whoever believes in him should not, what? Death, destruction, but have what? Everlasting what?
Life.
There's that word again. And in Romans chapter 6, verse 23, he says, for the wages of sin is death. It's destruction. It's the broad road. But the free gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Are you going to choose the narrow road? Are you going to choose Jesus and choose life? Or are you going to choose the broad road and choose death? It seems very simple, doesn't it? Who here wants to choose life? Well, everybody's going to raise their hand. I'm going to choose life. But man, it's complicated sometimes. And sometimes we think in our modern world, it's much more complicated because Jesus and those guys, they didn't have to go through what we have to go through. They didn't have to decide whether they're going to let the kids have a mobile phone or whether they're going to let the kids do this and they didn't have this temptation and they didn't have that temptation. But before we get too fast on what they did or didn't have, I want to point your eyes to Luke chapter 9, verses 57 through 62, where there are three men who are really struggling with this same kind of decision. One fellow comes up to Jesus and in verses 57 and beyond, and he says, Jesus, I'll follow you. And I get his language here. This is big. Wherever you go. If you want to go to the hot of Haiti, if you go to the coldest of Alaska, if you want to go to the homeless in Lexington or Cincinnati, if you want to go to the inner city, if you want to go out in the country, wherever you go. And Jesus responds and says this, wait a minute, hold your horses, just take note of this. The Son of Man, myself, Jesus, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but I, Jesus, I don't have a place to lay my head. So if you're going to follow me, just know, your life is going to be a lot different than most people's. You're not maybe going to have the house with a big fence and meaning that the son was putting the tradition as a priority over Jesus. Either way, Jesus is saying, I am more important than the tradition. I am more important than your relationship with your family. If you're going to follow me, you're going to have to choose what's most important, me or your family or your tradition. Finally, there's a third man there that said, I'll follow you. But first, I'm going to tell my family goodbye. And Jesus says, he who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for service in the kingdom of heaven. In those days, they plowed with a team of oxen or mules or horses, and maybe some of you guys can remember when that was a practice here before we had tractors. I personally don't. We had one workhorse when we moved from this area to Crittenden, and I never was a part of that. But if you think about it, when you're plowing, whether you're cultivating your crops or you're plowing your furrows and you look back, what happens? You get off course, don't you? And if you're plowing furrows and you're preparing that for soil for planting, what comes after planting? The harvest. So if you mess it up at that point, you're never going to get a harvest. If you're cultivating and you plow up the plants, you're never going to get a harvest. And what Jesus said, if you go back to tell your family about it, you're going to get involved. You're going to get distracted. You're going to get off course. You're not fit to serve me. If you're going to follow me, it's looking straight ahead. It's not looking back. 3 different guys. One followed Jesus. Jesus asked them to follow him. And they all had 3 different reasons of what's going on. One guy, it's not going to look quite like you might think. I don't have a place to lay my head. You could be homeless. You may not have the same type of possessions that everybody else has. The other guy has more of a priority with family or tradition. And Jesus says, no, that's not going to work. And one guy has a very big temptation and possibility of getting off course. The cost of following Jesus is high. It's not going to look the same. People aren't going to relate to you maybe like they relate to everyone else. Or maybe you're not going to relate to everybody else. It's the road less traveled. Anybody ever traveled down 75 going to Florida for vacation and you're going to Atlanta? Anybody try to go straight to Atlanta? Anybody try to go to Atlanta not during rush hour? Because it's always, oh, just go this time and when we rush hour. It's rush hour every time I go. It's 8 lanes wide. It's bumper to bumper and wall to wall. It's at a standstill. Most broad roads with everybody on it create standstills. Narrow roads less traveled. Might be able to go so fast. But rarely were you stopped for a very long time, were you? Another man was struggling with the same decision in Mark chapter 10, verses 17 through 27. Now get this, Jesus, you have to close your eyes to get there, go ahead, but just think about this scene. Jesus is walking along the road. And it says that a young man runs up to him, he falls on his knees. Paying Jesus homage, he's kind of in a posture of worship. And he says, good teacher. He even addresses him as someone over him. But he has a great question. It is a question for the ages, isn't it? What must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus looks at him and says, why do you call me good? Nobody's good but God. But besides that, you know the commandments. Don't kill, don't commit adultery. And Jesus names 3 more of the commandments from the 10 commandments. And from the way this unfolds, you almost get a sense that the man has a smug look on his face. And he says, I've done every one of those since I was a small child. And Jesus says, one thing you lack. Jesus looked at him and loved him and says, go sell all of your possessions, give it to the poor, and don't miss this, laying up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And then, come and follow me. You almost think that, man, hey, smug look, because I've done all these since I was a boy, because the Bible says that after Jesus looks at him, loves him, tells him to sell everything that he has, give to the poor, and make for yourself treasure, and then follow me, it says that his face fell. He walked away sad, because he was a man of great wealth. He couldn't do it. He couldn't choose Jesus over the stuff. Choosing the narrow gate and the narrow road, the road less traveled, has a very, very high cost to it. in human terms. But it is so worth it. I want to share an event from the Bible that most of you guys will probably tell me all the details. But I think it is one, and if you've been on this trip with me, Jimmy and Macy, and some of you guys, you've heard me tell the story so many times. But it is one I think illustrates traveling the road less traveled. Choosing God, choosing Jesus above everything else, as well as in the Bible. It's from 1 Samuel chapter 17. It's a young man who has some older brothers that are in the war with Saul. King Saul has led his army to the valley of Elah, and they're fighting the Philistine army. And the Bible just paints this picture that you've got the Philistines on this hillside, one hillside, and the Israelites on the other. So Israelites, Philistines, you're at each other. You got the valley of Elah right down the middle. And David's dad says, I want you to take some stuff to your brothers, I want you to check on them. You know, they couldn't just do a video chat whenever they wanted to if the boys were off to war. And so he gives David some supplies and sends him on his way. And little David goes, and while he's there, and I want you to think about this, young men, or guys, because we're guys. When we were young, we would have been all over this. The sound is made and is heard that would tell the armies to get battle ready. And whether it was a trumpet or drums or whatever. And so when they heard the sound, they would all line up for battle. And so about the time David gets there, he's talking to his brother, he's checking on him. That sound takes place, and they line up for battle. Well, as a young man, I'm going to see some fighting. Maybe I get to see some charioteers. Maybe I get to see archers. Maybe I get to see people get speared to death, heads cut off on him. Rah! And he wants to see these things. And so David goes right up to the line with his brothers. And he's waiting for the battle to begin. And guess what happens? Absolutely nothing. But on the other side, the Philistine side, you guys know what happens. This big giant of a man, he's a champion warrior. His name's Goliath. He's 9 foot 9 inches tall. Put that in perspective. Go home, look at your 10-foot ball. It's just 3 inches shorter than what the height of this man would have been. He has been trained to fight all his life. He has the most technologically advanced armor and fighting materials known to man. The Bible describes that he has scale armor. His spear is like a weaver's rod. They looked that up. It's like 26 feet long. He could reach out there and touch you. He's been doing this all his life. Everybody on the Israelite side just faints with fear. I mean, they're shaking in their boots. Oh, good night, we're ready. This guy's so big, and he's got so much technology, and there's nothing any of us can do. He's outmatched us with strength, and he's been way out trained than we are. He's got more materials to fight with than any of us have. And he starts trash talking the Israelites' God. He is defying. And what he's saying is, I'm bigger than your God. Because if your God was big enough, he'd be bigger than me. If your God was big enough, you would come out and fight me. And he made a deal with him. Look, we don't have to line up for battle. Why do you line up for battle? You're not going to fight me anyway. You couldn't put people down any worse than what Goliath was putting the Israelites down. You couldn't taunt them any more than what Goliath was taunting them. And what he's telling them is, it's useless. You're not going to fight us anyway because you're scared to death of me. Matter of fact, I'll make a deal with you. You pick one guy to come out here and fight. If he wins, we will be your servants, we'll be your slaves. If I win, you'll be our slaves, our servants. Who's going to do that? He's taller, he's bigger, he's stronger, he's more advanced, better trained. We don't have a chance. That's all they can think about. David hears this as a young man. He's getting a little bit ticked off. He's like, who is this unclean, uncircumcised Gentile? I mean, he really put him in. He's trash talking about it. And his brothers get mad at him, like, get out of here, you little nosy brat. Get back home and watch those few sheep that Dad has you watching. You insignificant nobody. And David won't take no for an answer. He starts talking to the other guys, like, so what happens if we go fight this guy and we win? And they're like, well, some pretty amazing things will be in your treasure chest. You'll be very wealthy. King's going to make sure of that. You won't have to pay any taxes. I'm not sure how old David was to think this was gross or if this was great, but you'll also have the king's daughter's hand in marriage. Wow. Nice. And so he's talking about this, and he's talking about, hey, I'll go fight him. And as you can imagine, it's been 40 days. They're at a standstill. Think 40 days. That's 10 days longer than a month. That's hard for us to think because everything in this life moves so fast, doesn't it? What was 40 days ago? What's going to happen 40 days from now? Sorry, kids, teachers, you're going to be back at school. Some are going to be over for the most part. For 40 days, Goliath comes out and he taunts and he trash talks and he's telling them, you're too scared. You can't fight me. I'll whip your... And he's doing all that stuff. But then there's somebody in the camp on this side who starts talking about, we could beat this guy. What happens if we win? Word gets all the way back to King Saul, and he's like, hey, wait a minute. Does somebody have like some secret strategy that I don't know about? Do we have like a secret weapon? Have you all come up with some kind of a way to do this? Who is this? And like, well, his name's David. We'll send him to you. And for a minute, Saul has hope, and then David walks in, this little boy, and he's like, oh, never mind, forget it. You can't do this. You're just a little boy. This guy's been trained since forever. And David's like, wait, hold on a minute. Don't tell me I can't. And then your mind saw that when he was just a little boy, younger than this, while he was watching his dad's sheep. I think we miss the significance of this sometimes. That David went after the bear. What would you do in Gatlinburg if a bear appeared? You roll up your windows and you put it in drive and you go as fast as you can away from it. If you're in your right mind, right? But a lion whose roar can be heard for 5 miles? And David reminds Saul, look, when I was watching my father's sheep, both a bear and a lion on 2 separate occasions stole a sheep. I went after him. And with God's help, I defeated the lion, and I defeated the bear, and I got the sheep out of their mouths. And if this unclean, uncircumcised Gentile thinks he's going to defy our God, he's got another thing coming. I'll take him down with God's help. And so I was like, well, okay, but if you're going to do this, you need some armor, son. You can't go out there naked like this. Not naked, but, with no armor. And they put the king's going on, and it's like a bobblehead because it's way too big. And his tunic, which, you got a man and you got the way. And none of that. He's like, look, this doesn't work. Just let me go fight him my way with our God. You know the story. He's got a little sheep stick, something that they would use to guide the sheep along. It doesn't say staff, it says stick. And took his sling, which was just some kind of 2 strings with a pouch in the middle. You'd secure one end to your finger, and then you would loosely hold the other end. You put a weapon in the pouch. And so David goes down the street, he gets 5 stones. Just thought that Goliath also had some brothers he might have to take care of, so he was going to fight them all. It didn't matter, he had God on his side. And he goes out to the battlefield. And when he gets out to the battlefield, Goliath is doing a 9-foot 9-inch belly laugh. Am I a dog that you're going to come out here with a stick and try to whip me? Really? And then he starts telling David, look, I'm going to cut you up. I'm going to feed your flesh to the birds. And David says, look, you don't understand. You come to me, and I love this. This is one of my favorite verses of the whole Bible. Not favorite, but one of them. You come to me with sword, javelin, and spear. But I come to you in the name of the living God of the army of Israel. And I'm going to feed your flesh to the birds. It was game on. David puts a little rock in the pouch. He starts turning the little sling. They got to think, March Madness, we're down to the last game. The Cinderella team is down by 2. They have to shoot a 3-pointer to win. Everybody in that state is on the edge of their seat. So you got Israel's army over here, they're on their edge of their seats like, why in the world are we trusting our future to this kid? And everybody on the Philistine side, they're on the edge of their seats too. They're like, hey, watch our champion, we're squashing him like a bug. And Dave's got a sling, and he's going around, and right in the forehead. The only place that the sophisticated, technologically advanced armor did not cover. What a coincidence, right? No. David doesn't stop there. As soon as Goliath goes down, he takes off running with everything he has in him. He grabs Goliath's sword, and I'll spare you the more details because it's too close to punch. But there was a great victory that day. Why? Because David chose the road less traveled. His family wouldn't go. His brothers were like, nope. Matter of fact, you need to get on back home and take care of those little sheep. They tried to shun him. The soldiers that were older than David, no, we're not going either. But if you do, this is what happens. King Saul, the highest ranking leader in the whole nation, was not about to touch fighting Goliath. But David chose the narrow gate. David chose the narrow road, the one that nobody else would go. And what happened? What did it lead to? It led to life, didn't it? What a great victory that took place that day. I would say that within this group of people here, some of you feel like you're in the battle of your life right now. You got some huge giants trying to take you down, don't you? Jesus is wanting to remind you, take the narrow road. Take the road less traveled. It leads to life. I work in Florence, Kentucky. Many of you know where that is exactly. And when I leave work, I take 75 south. It's a pretty good sized road. Get off of the Crittenden exit. At the end of the exit, turn left on Violet Road. We get to the end of Violet Road at 25, I turn right and go south. I love taking 491 to Wildlife Road. It's just this little bitty narrow road. Nobody hardly ever on it. It's just a road for the wildlife management. But it takes me home. When I get off of that road, it turns into gravel, my driveway, and I'm pulling in the house. That's home. That's my wife. That's my wife and my kids. So if you go from the big road to the narrow road, it will lead you home. They've been on the wide road all their lives. Maybe they don't even understand what the narrow road is. I just pray in these moments of decision, we would take just a few moments to really reflect on where we're going. Maybe we've gotten off the narrow road and on the broad road, and we feel like we're in Atlanta at a standstill. We're at the Valley of the Law. We're just getting nowhere. Even though we can't go 90 miles an hour down the side road, we still keep going. So, Father, as we prepare to sing this hymn of decision, we lift up to you those who are contemplating the decision to follow Jesus, to follow the narrow road. May your Spirit lead them. Father, there are some who need to change their course and get back on the narrow road. Whatever that decision is, Father, we pray that your Spirit will lead us all to the narrow gate, to the narrow road that leads to life. I pray this in Jesus' powerful and precious name. Amen.